أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين. Alhamdulillah, brothers and respected elders and sisters, that Allah Azza wa Jalla has given us this opportunity to bring awareness of our livelihood, and to present the things that Allah Azza wa Jalla has bestowed with us in giving the community and ourselves the halal and tayyiba, the provisions that Allah Azza wa Jalla has provided us with. In the Quran, Allah mentions, "Kulu mimma razaqnakum halalan tayyiba." Eat from the provisions that we've provided you. That's halal and tayyiba, provisions that are permitted, and tayyib meaning nutrition or wholesome stuff. And alhamdulillah, this is our second seminar or presentation about health that we have in this locality. And again, we thank you for coming. And inshallah, I'll present Dr. Maaz, and hopefully, inshallah, explain everything else in detail. Jazakumullah khair, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah, Brother Yahya. Brother Yahya had approached me to discuss a health topic today. So, as I was trying to rack my brain just to think of what our community might need in terms of, just a reminder of, some of the health conditions that face not only the Muslim Ummah, but, the Ummah at large. We're here in this society, everything moves fast. We want fast service, fast food, fast banking, fast cars. So we want everything fast. So just in a nutshell, when you look at this type of lifestyle, there's things that are good and there's things that are bad. Now, from a holistic standpoint, our health tends to have, a negative effect on this lifestyle or from this lifestyle, especially from a dietary standpoint. When you don't take time to prepare your own meals, you watch what goes into the meal preparation process, and we're, I'm a a culprit of this as well. You just want something fast. You just pick it up from any kind of restaurant here or there or wherever the case may be, and you don't know what is actually going into the food, whether it's high in saturated fat, the cleanliness that the food preparers use to actually make the food. These are all parameters that we don't really think about. We just want the food right now, right here. So these type of foods that we can find, from a fast food standpoint, especially, can harm us in the long run. Yeah, and especially our heart. The heart is. I was discussing with Brother Osama earlier, and he had reminded me of a hadith that I would more or less begin my discussion on the heart with, to paraphrase. And it's been stated by our Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam that there is one piece of meat in our body that if it is good, everything else is good. And the meaning, more or less, I'm paraphrasing, so Walaikum Assalam. So if there's one piece of meat in the body that's good, and if it is good, the rest of the body, alhamdulillah, is good. But if this piece of meat is bad or corrupted, then the rest of the body will suffer. And that piece of meat is the heart. So inshallah, I just will begin by discussing blood. Now, if you look at the heart is more or less a pump. You can think of it as a factory, as a water, like we have water treatment facilities. They pump water to everybody's business, home, and whatnot. So the essential functioning of the heart is a pump. What does it pump? It pumps blood. Everybody knows that. And without blood, you have no life. Blood is essentially a flowing river that flows through veins and arteries throughout our body. And there are millions of small blood vessels, which we call capillaries, and venules. Capillaries carry oxygenated blood, which I'll get to, and venules, or veins, they carry deoxygenated blood. So the oxygenated blood reaches all parts of the body, and the deoxygenated blood comes back to the heart to pick up oxygen and cycle through again and again and again and again. And these things, subhanAllah, we don't even think about. It's just pumping. How many times a day do you actually think about your heart pumping blood? I don't. We just does. It pumps. So it allows for the living body to self-sustain, meaning this cycle, the circuit of blood flow from the heart to the rest of the body and back to the heart and to the rest of the body. It keeps going. And blood, what does it carry? What does blood carry? Blood provides nourishment. When we intake food, our digestive system, which I believe was the last lecture, breaks down the food into simple forms that our body can use. And this comes in the forms of vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, fats, amino acids, proteins. So when this breakdown process occurs, the blood is in charge of taking the nutrients from the digestive tract and carrying it to different parts of the body. For our muscle tissue, our brain tissue, our bones, our skin, everything requires nourishment. Likewise, in retrospect, nourishment is carried to the body's organs and tissues, and waste material is carried away in the form of toxins, bacteria, oxidative materials, which basically means anytime we ingest things that don't sit well with us, or people that partake in certain lifestyle choices which are harmful, they ingest different toxins, and that is the responsibility of clearing those toxins so that it doesn't do more harm to the body is given to the blood and liver and kidneys, and it's almost like a collaborative effort. So wastes are carried away from the blood via our immune system, and the immune system, which is connected with our blood supply. So our immune system, such as our cells that help fight infection, that's what immune system is. We have, along with blood vessels, we have lymph vessels, Lymph. Lymph nodes, lymph vessels are located throughout our body. They produce cells which help fight infection. Now they're connected with blood supply, with the blood vessels. So as soon as the body, subhanAllah, detects some type of foreign object, like whether it is a respiratory virus or bacteria ingested through the stomach, the lymph, gets active, and it sends cells to fight this infection, and that process is a chemical reaction which happens in the blood. So this is why the blood is a defense medium, because the number one defense of our body comes from the blood. So if we keep our blood clean, inshallah, we won't have many health illnesses, but we're all human, and we have issues right now with pollen and respiratory illnesses and that sort of thing, which kind of fight our system, which we have to fight back, and that's the number one job of the lymph system, and as it's intertwined with the blood. This slide here is a development of the heart as an organ, in vitro. In vitro meaning inside the womb of the mother. So I chose to place this here to show us how the heart develops. And like I said, the heart has four components, or four quadrants. And from this picture here on the left, which I'm circling, scientists will give you some real elaborate explanation, but more or less what's happening is blood vessels are forming within the first 18 days of embryonic development. And as you can see, you see an outpouching. This is essentially the formation of the first couple of quadrants of the heart. Okay? And anytime you see cardiogenic, that means cardio is dealing with the heart, and genic, meaning to break down the word, is formation. So this is cardiogenic, formation of the heart. And you have blood supply coming from the mother, and this occurs during the 20th day. And anytime you see a picture, an anatomical picture of blood vessels, you'll always, the illustrator will always have red indicating oxygenated blood and blue indicating deoxygenated blood. So this is the primitive tubes which will carry blood throughout the fetal body. You have a process of fusion of these vessels in the first 3 weeks of life, and this is essentially a tube which, as you can see, in the first 30 days or so, you have these outpouchings appearing, and blood is transferring from the from the mother to the fetus. And you have some terminologies here. You have a arteriosus, artery, indicating blood that's rich in oxygen, and you have a ventricle, which meaning component or compartment. Ventricles, simultaneously with ventricles, you have atriums. Atriums are also collective compartments, which I'll get to in a second, regarding the storage of blood and the transferring of blood. In the first 40 days or so, moving along, you have essentially a heart here. So you have the ventricle, you have the atria, and you have a right and left side. And you have a matching ventricle and a matching atria on the other side. And as you see this, what I'm circling here, this stalk of blood vessels are going to carry blood throughout the body of the fetus. And this is a more elaborate cross-section of an anatomical description of or drawing of a fetal heart within the first 8 weeks, 8 weeks of life. You have the quadrants that I was explaining, and you have a central divide between the right side and left side. And why this is important, I'll get to in a second. And like I said from the beginning, the heart is a central pump station. If we think about it, sometimes science, even for myself, can go over your head, because they when you're sitting in lectures and things of that nature, they're using terms and figures and facts, and we try to make it, or I try to put it in layperson's terms so that we can all understand, myself included. So a good analogy that I thought about was using the heart as a pump station. Now the heart is a qudrat of Allah, that it has its own power supply. Power coming from electrical impulses passed through the AV node and SA node, the sinoatrial node and the atrioventricular node. Now the heart is such a wallahu alam, it's such a beautiful organ. It's such a complex organ that it can beat on its own, even if it's brought out of your chest. Because of this power supply, electric activity of the heart is attached to the sinoatrial node, which passes impulses through the nerve fibers that are surrounding the heart, and the heart reacts to these impulses, and the impulses are to trigger pumping. What happens when you pump? When you lift weights, you pump, you contract, you expand and contract, you expand and contract, you relax and contract, and the relaxing of the contracting of the heart is what is essentially what causes blood to be pushed away and received by the heart. So that's why I've indicated that the heart has a receiving zone, indicating that blood comes from the rest of our bodies, our limbs, our digestive tract, our brains, and comes back to the heart. What does it lack? It lacks oxygen. So this is, subhanAllah, what a circuit we have. We have input or receiving. We're receiving, the heart is receiving blood from the rest of the bodies and organs and tissues, and it's going to what? It's going to pick up oxygen. Now, how does it do that? Well, we have lungs, 2 lungs. We breathe in air. So air mixed with blood pass through the lungs back to the heart. And once we have the lungs, which function as mainly to provide oxygen to the blood from the heart, we have alveoli. Alveoli are no more than air sacs. We have these capillaries, which I talked about, small vessels of blood, blood vessels, and they essentially pass through all these air sacs, or alveoli, and pick up oxygen. They draw in oxygen into their, it's like a tube. So you imagine a tube, and you imagine, you can think of an alveoli structure as a bunch of grapes. They almost look like that in a picture. So these blood vessels are surrounding this bunch of grapes, and as you inhale air, the alveoli expand because they're swelling up with air. And once you have these blood vessels, the blood vessels are attached to the alveoli, the air sacs, and there's a transfer. There's a transfer of oxygen into the capillaries. And these capillaries branch, they're branches. So they branch into essentially the artery which carries the oxygen back into the heart. So this happens on the receiving end of the heart, and then the shipping process happens on the opposite side. So if you think about it, your heart is divided into four, and on the right side you have the blood coming from the lungs, which is going to have, or blood coming from the rest of the body, excuse me, and this is lacking oxygen. You have on the left side, once it passes through the lungs, you have what now is oxygenated blood, and this is pumped to the left side. So now once it's on the left side, it's carried to the rest of the body, and I'll explain this in a drawing too. And actually, we're going to cut to a video which will show this process.
So what you're looking at is one of the most amazing organs in your body. This is the human heart, and it's shown with all of the vessels on it, and you can see the vessels coming into it and out of it. But the heart at its core is a pump, and this pump is why we call it the hardest working organ in our body, because it starts pumping blood from the point where you're a little fetus, maybe about 8 weeks old, all the way until the point where you die. And so this organ, I think it'd be really cool to look at in a little bit more detail, but it's hard to do that looking just at the outside. So what I did is I actually drew what it might look like on the inside. So let me actually just show you that now, and we'll follow the path
Pay
of
attention
blood
to the blue
through
and the
heart
red
using this diagram. Let me start with a little picture in the corner. So let's say we have a person here, and this is their face, and this is their neck. I'm going to draw their arms, and they have in the middle of their chest their heart. And so the whole goal is to make sure that blood from all parts of their body, including their legs, can make its way back to the heart first of all, and then get pumped back out to the body. So blood is going to come up from this arm, let's say, and dump into there, and the same on this side, and it's going to come from their head. And all three sources, the two arms and the head, are going to come together into one big vein, and that's going to be dumping into the top of the heart. And then separately, you've got veins from the legs meeting up with veins from the belly, coming into another opening into the heart. So that's how the blood gets back to the heart. And anytime I mention the word vein, I just want you to make sure you think of blood going towards the heart. Towards the heart. Now, if blood is going towards the heart, then after the blood is pumped by the heart, it's going to have to go out to the heart, right? It's going to have to go away from the heart. So that's the aorta. And the aorta actually has a little arch like that. We call it the aortic arch. And it sends off one vessel to the arm, one vessel up this way, a vessel over this way, and then this arch kind of goes down, 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 and splits like that. So this is kind of a simplified version of it, but you can see how there are definitely some parallels between how the veins and the arteries are set up. And arteries, so anytime I mention the word artery, I want you to think of blood going away from the heart. And an easy way to remember that is that they both start with the letter A. So going to our big diagram now, we can see that blood coming in this way and blood coming in this way is ending up at the same spot. It's going to end up at the, actually maybe I'll draw it here, is ending up at the right atrium. Right atrium. That's just the name of the chamber that the blood ends up in. And it came into the right atrium from a giant vessel up top called the superior vena cava. And this is a vein, of course, because it's bringing blood towards the heart. And down here, the inferior vena cava. Inferior vena cava. So these are the two directions that blood is going to be flowing. And once blood is in the right atrium, it's going to head down into the right ventricle. So this is the right ventricle, down here. This is the second chamber of the heart. And it gets there by passing through a valve. And this valve and all valves in the heart are basically there to keep blood moving in the right direction, so it doesn't go in the backwards direction. So this valve is called the tricuspid valve. Tricuspid valve. And it's called that because it's basically got 3 little flaps. That's why they call it tri. And I know you can only see 2 in my drawing, and that's just because my drawing is not perfect. And it's hard to show kind of a flap coming out at you, but you can imagine it. So blood goes into the right ventricle, and where does it go next? Well, after that, it's going to go this way. It's going to go into this vessel, and it's going to split. But before it goes there, it has to pass through another valve. So this is a valve right here called a pulmonary valve. Pulmonary valve. And it gives you a clue as to where things are going to go next, right? Because the word pulmonary means lungs. And so if this is my lung on this side, this is my left lung, and this is my right lung on this side, then these vessels, and I'll let you try to guess what they would be called, these vessels, this would be my, make sure I get my right and left straight, this is my left pulmonary artery, and I hesitated there just to make sure you got that because it's taking blood away from the heart, and this is my right pulmonary artery. So this is my right and left pulmonary artery. And so blood goes now into my lungs, right? These are the lungs that are kind of nestled into my thorax where my heart is sitting. Goes into my lungs, and remember, this blood is blue. Why is it blue? Well, it's blue because it doesn't have very much oxygen. And so one thing that I need to pick up is oxygen. And so that's one thing that the lungs are going to help me pick up, and I'm going to write O2 for oxygen. And it's also blue, and that reminds us that it's full of carbon dioxide. It's full of waste because it's coming from the body, right? The body's made a lot of carbon dioxide that it's trying to get rid of. So in the lungs, you get rid of your carbon dioxide and you pick up oxygen. So that's why I switch at this point from a blue-colored vessel to a red-colored vessel. So now blood comes back in this way, and dumps into this chamber. So what is that? This is our left atrium. Our left atrium. So just like our right atrium, we have one on the left. And it goes down into, and you can probably guess what this one is called, it's our left ventricle. So just like before, where it went from the right atrium to the right ventricle, now we're going from the left atrium to the left ventricle. And it passes through a valve here, right? So this valve is called the mitral valve. Mitral valve. And its job is, of course, to make sure that blood does not go from the left ventricle back to the left atrium by accident. It wants to make sure that there's forward flow. And then the final valve, and I have to find a nice spot to write it, maybe right here, this final valve that it passes through is called the aortic valve. Aortic valve. And the aortic valve is going to be what divides the left ventricle from this giant vessel that we talked about earlier. And this is, of course, the aorta. This is my aorta. So now blood is going to go through the aorta to the rest of the body. So you can see how blood now flows from the body into the 4 chambers. First into the right atrium, this is chamber number 1. And then it goes into the right ventricle, this is chamber number 2. It goes to the lungs and then back out to the left atrium, so this is chamber number 3, and then the left ventricle. And this happens every moment of every day. Every time you hear your heart beating, this process is going on.
For demonstrative purposes, I'd like to make this a little interactive, so I need 4 volunteers. So as the video, come on, don't be shy. 2 more. So we have, like the video had explained and like we were talking about, we have 4 chambers of the heart. So these brothers on the right, okay, you, my brother, are atrium, okay? You will be a ventricle, okay, my brother? So, okay. Now if you can imagine, Okay, we'll move forward, step behind him. And if you imagine, just use your imagination for a second, that in between these two compartments, these two brothers, atrium and ventricle, you have a valve like it was talked about. Now these valves are help to pass blood from one compartment to the next. So if you imagine on the outsides, now these two brothers, you know, this brother here will be atria, and this brother here will be a ventricle. Okay. So now, as you can see, we have 4 compartments. Okay. Now, if we had, you know, a swan camera, then we would see exactly what was happening when blood is sent from the lungs, which are here and on the opposite sides, and passed from the rest of the body to the right atria. Okay, that's the first compartment that fills with deoxygenated blood. Okay. Now, once it passes from the right atria through the valve into the right ventricle. Now, the right ventricle is larger than the right atria because it's supposed to push. And this happens in the expansion and the contraction of the heart. You may have heard, you know, your heartbeat. It goes lump, dup, or you know, whatever sound effect you want to add. Basically, once it fills up, this transferring of blood is occurring. Okay, so you have blood passing through the first lub from the right side, right atria to the right ventricle. From the right ventricle, it goes to the lungs. This is deoxygenated blood, the blue. So once it passes to the lungs, and lungs are on both sides, it picks up and goes to the left atria. Now once it's in the left atria, it has oxygen. Okay? Now oxygen is what we all need. We all know that. So oxygenated blood, how does it get to the rest of the body? We're only talking about the heart and lungs right now. So the blood system is designed in such a way that whenever you have that lub-dub, it's an expansion and contraction, expansion and contraction. And with each expansion and contraction, you have blood shifting compartments, okay, through these valves. It's the opening of the valve and closing of the valve. That's what's causing that sound. So now we have a valve, likewise on the right side, we have a valve between these two brothers here, a mitral valve, and it's passing from the left atria to the left ventricle. Now the left ventricle is the strongest part of the heart because it has to push blood against gravity through the aorta, the large vessel that we saw in the illustration. It has to push to the aorta, and from the aorta, which is the largest blood vessel in the body, it goes all over, okay, all over the body. So the blood flows from the left ventricle through the rest of the body in this process. So this demonstration, Jazakallah khair. It's an interactive demonstration. Okay. And this is like another picture. I like pictures, so sometimes the best learning device is an illustration. And like we had these brothers, Jazakallah khair, for your example. We have the right side, right atria here, and right ventricle. And matching on the opposite side, we have the left atria and the left ventricle. Now the heart is not like a Valentine shape, oh yeah, it's like, no, that's not the case. That's just something that we won't get into, but it's more or less shaped like that on a slant. So if I can demonstrate like on myself, it's going to be the lower part will be pointing kind of at an angle, and the upper part, you know, is somewhat, you know, towards the middle of the chest. So this is a cross section of what happens from this slide. You know, when they have arrows coming in and going out. Anytime you have blue, like was mentioned, it's lacking oxygen. And the lungs, which was talked about in the video, exchange. There's gas exchange from oxygen to carbon dioxide. So when we exhale, you know, we're breathing out carbon dioxide. When we inhale, there goes oxygen. So oxygen from inhalation and carbon dioxide from exhalation. So the lungs trap this oxygen when we breathe in and pass it along to the right side. Now once it picks up the oxygen, it passes to the left side and goes through the aorta, which we demonstrated. And this is a cross-section of basically how the river flows, so to speak. You know, the blood comes in from top. This is, if you can imagine, this is the brain and the upper limbs, and this is the lower limbs, superior, inferior, superior, and it enters the heart on the right side, gets pushed through the valve here, and this is the tricuspid valve, and then we have the pulmonary valve, which after the lubbed up contractility of the heart passes to the pulmonary circuit. Now we have a pulmonary artery, a branch or a split, because we have two lungs. So they go into both lungs and pick up oxygen. Okay? Once the oxygen is picked up, it comes back into the pulmonary veins. Now, interesting to note that when we first talked, I had mentioned that arteries carry oxygenated blood. That's not the case in the heart. The pulmonary vein is the only vein in the body that carries oxygenated blood. So it's something to remember. So pulmonary vein, because it's carrying blood away, like the video had mentioned, it's carrying it away from the lungs. If you can imagine a lung here and a lung here, it's carrying away from the lungs back to the heart on the left side into the left atrium. Goes past through the mitral valve and into the left ventricle, which is the strongest part of the heart. Why so? Because it's in charge to pump blood against a current into the heart's main branch, aorta, which is called aorta. And the aorta has several branches here which carry blood all throughout the body. Now, some medical tests which, you know, we'll just briefly touch upon to determine how the functioning of the heart is, which most commonly is an EKG. An EKG evaluates the electric circuit. So when we talked about the SA node and AV node, an EKG will determine how the functioning of the heart is in terms of the electric carrying capacity. So if there's an issue with, say, potassium deficiency in the diet, or some type of trauma or injury, or left ventricular hypertrophy, which is actual increasing of the muscle on the left side and that left ventricle, which is the strongest part of the heart. Sometimes it gets so swollen. If you imagine a bodybuilder in the gym, they pump iron to get swollen. Now the same can be said about the heart, because the heart essentially is a muscle. So when you have this muscle on the left side getting so large that it is unable to adequately contract, because it's so thick that it's not able to provide enough blood to the aorta to push along the circuit into the rest of the body. That's called left ventricular hypertrophy. And that can be detected by an EKG and also more definitively by echocardiogram, which is no more than an ultrasound of the heart. You know, when we have, you know, in the 3 trimesters of pregnancy, usually the gynecologist will do an ultrasound for the mother to give them an idea of the fetal development. And same thing, the same technology is used in the echocardiogram. Now, echocardiogram, in a nutshell, basically can determine the flow into and out of the heart. It'll give you a good picture, a better picture than the EKG will, of how the blood is flowing in and flowing out, and whether or not there is any clogs, if you will, in a pipe structure. If you think of it from a standpoint of the plumbing industry, you have pipes that, you know, run water. Water is run, you know, through the pipes, you know, evenly or with adequate pressure. But when there's a clog, you have back pressure, and that can be determined by the echocardiogram. If you have pressure built up within the arteries, which is basically caused by plaque buildup, and I'll touch on that later on. Plaque buildup inside the walls of the artery is what causes high blood pressure, and we've all heard the term high blood pressure. So high blood pressure, you know, how is it caused? Well, the number one culprit is a diet which we had talked about in the beginning, which involves fast foods, you know, preparing meals, you know, not from your own side, but from somebody else, you know, preparing your meal with a lot of additives, you know, salt, different chemicals, preservatives. Anytime you have packaged foods, for example, you know, you have preservatives which will extend the food's shelf life. And it also can cause these plaques to build up, because who knows, there's not enough research on the actual preservatives that go into our foods, which long term, what does it happen? What happens inside the body? And that's something that, you know, should strike a chord with all of us. Okay, our factory is shut down. What happens? Not enough input. You know, there's something wrong with the receiving zone. The receiving zone of our blood from our lungs is not. There's something's wrong. Okay. Now, how can that happen? Well, this is caused by not enough oxygen going into the lungs. You know, how does this happen? You know, this is a kind of, you know, this is how you approach medicine. How is this happening? How is this happening? What are the differentials? And this is how you have to actually look at it, from focusing on the problem to what's happening with a holistic standpoint. When, for example, when someone is a smoker for a long history, you know, their lungs are not functioning correctly. Their alveoli, or their air sacs, if you can imagine a bunch of grapes, they're shriveled up grapes. They're raisins. They're not expanding and contracting and allowing air to be trapped into their pockets, so that the blood can pick up, the small blood vessels can pick up oxygen through that gas exchange. That's one of the things that, you know, you can attribute to an inadequate input. Not enough power. There's an issue with the EKG. The electric activity of the heart, something is going on. The electric impulse is not passing through. Whether that's from trauma to the heart, whether that's from drugs, you know, drug abuse, or, you know, toxins can cause problems with the contractility of the heart, with that electric impulse of the heart. Whether it's high potassium, high sodium, these minerals are used specifically by the heart. And if it's a high potassium within the heart won't function correctly. So there's not enough impulse to allow the heart to contract and expand sufficiently. Poor workflow. When you think about it, the river runs into a dam. There's a dam, the water is not passing through. You know, we have water that's being trapped, or there's back pressure, you know, and we have this dam. Similarly, if you make that analogy into the heart, we have some blockage. Everybody's heard of the term blockage or plaque buildup within the walls of the arteries. This causes blood pressure to increase because if you think about it as a pipe, you have around the wall, inside walls of the pipe, you have plaque built up. Plaque doesn't build up overnight. It takes years to build up within the walls of the arteries. This causes a flow which is hindered or, you know, lacking. Now this flow that's lacking, we can all imagine that the rest of our body is not adequately being supplied by blood, and oxygenated rich blood. And that's when we get problems with blood pressure, you know, strokes, you know, injuries to the brain, CVAs, or, you know, cerebrovascular attacks, and things of that nature, which are all caused by an inadequate workflow or blood flow, and this shipping backlog, or in other words, you know, there's vessels around the heart which actually supply blood to the heart itself, because the heart is a living tissue. Every living tissue within the body, every living organ needs blood, and the heart has its own blood supply. So if the blood supply within the heart is whether there's a blockage or whether there's injury to the heart or something along those lines, the blood to the heart will not actually reach the heart. And so now our pumping station is, you know, our shipping and receiving process is not going to occur effectively because the heart is actually lacking blood. Some harmful substances which can cause a lot of these attacks and heart attacks, strokes, you know, things of that nature are caused by cholesterol built up, infections, which some infections specifically to the valves, which we had demonstrated between the brothers on the right side and the left side. These valves can become infected, and the valves will not open up and close, open and close after every impulse which is sent by those sinoatrial and atrioventricular nodes. So that those valves become infected. It's called endocarditis, and that's an infection within the valves of the heart. Some toxins like you know, you think about you know, drugs and things of that nature, which cause specific harm to the heart, because anytime you ingest something, it has to travel through your blood system and your circulatory system and eventually reach your heart. Once it reaches the heart, it can wreak havoc. And also the injury to the heart muscle from any type of trauma. Let's talk about cholesterol, the first one on this list, in a short video.
Your pet is like a mirror. They reflect what you give them. That's why the quality of their nutrition is so...
If you have hyperlipidemia, commonly known as high cholesterol, you have high levels of lipids in your blood. Lipids are fats and fat-like substances. In this condition, the most common types of lipids are cholesterol and triglycerides. Your body needs cholesterol to function properly. It makes all the cholesterol you need, mostly in your liver. The cells in your body need cholesterol as part of their cell membrane. Your skin uses sunlight and cholesterol to make vitamin D. Certain glands, such as the testicles in men and the adrenal glands, use cholesterol to make important chemicals called hormones. And your liver uses cholesterol to make bile acids, which help to digest fat in the food you eat. Your body uses triglycerides for energy. Triglycerides in your blood come from food and your liver. Foods high in triglycerides include fatty foods, refined carbohydrates, foods high in simple sugars, and alcohol. From your liver, your lipids are not able to move through your bloodstream without some adjustment. To enable their movement, your liver wraps certain proteins around the lipids. The resulting new molecule, called a lipoprotein, can move through your bloodstream and throughout your body to the cells that need it. Depending on which type of lipoprotein your cholesterol is part of, determines whether your cholesterol is good or bad. For example, your liver makes very low-density lipoproteins, or VLDLs, which are the source of bad cholesterol, or LDL. These lipoproteins are stuffed with cholesterol and triglycerides. VLDL travels through your bloodstream, delivering triglycerides to your cells, which use them for energy. If your liver makes more VLDL than your body needs for energy, the VLDL stores the extra triglycerides as body fat. After losing its triglycerides, a VLDL becomes a low-density lipoprotein, or LDL. LDL travels through your bloodstream, delivering cholesterol to the cells that need it. If your body makes too much LDL, it can build up in your blood. LDL can deposit in the walls of your blood vessels, causing a buildup of fatty material called plaque.
That's
Damage
what causes
to vessel
plaque.
walls can make it easier for LDL to form plaques. Over time, this buildup can narrow the blood vessel and reduce blood flow. This is why LDL is called the bad cholesterol. A common place this plaque can build up is in your coronary arteries, which are the blood vessels that feed your heart muscle. This buildup causes coronary artery disease and increases your risk of a heart attack. Plaque in other arteries, such as the carotid arteries in your neck, can reduce blood flow to your brain and increase the risk of a stroke. Your liver also makes high-density lipoprotein, or HDL, also known as the good cholesterol. HDL has more protein and very little cholesterol and triglycerides compared to LDL. HDL helps remove excess cholesterol from your cells and from plaque in your blood vessels. This is why HDL is called the good cholesterol. HDL returns the excess cholesterol to your liver, which removes it from your body. If you are 20 years of age or older, the National Institutes of Health recommends you have a blood test every 5 years called a fasting lipoprotein profile. It measures your levels of total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, and triglycerides. During this test, a blood sample will be taken from your arm or finger after you have not eaten for 9 to 12 hours. The total cholesterol goal should be less than 200 milligrams per deciliter. For most people, an ideal HDL, or good cholesterol, should be 60 or higher. An ideal LDL, or bad cholesterol, should be less than 100. And fasting triglycerides should be less than 150. Your specific goals may vary depending on your health situation. Ask your doctor what your lipid goals should be. If your cholesterol levels are too high, it's important to eat a heart-healthy diet with lean sources of protein and plenty of fruits and vegetables. Also, the types of fats you eat can affect your cholesterol level. For example, saturated fats and trans fats tend to raise LDL cholesterol in your blood. These fats are usually solid at room temperature and are found in meat and dairy products, many processed foods, and tropical oils such as coconut oil, palm oil, and cocoa butter. Unsaturated fats, including polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats, are healthier fats that are usually more liquid at room temperature. They are found in foods such as fish, nuts, and vegetable oils. Other lifestyle decisions you can make to help your cholesterol are not smoking and getting regular exercise, such as brisk walking or running. If lifestyle changes can't reduce your cholesterol levels enough, your doctor may prescribe certain medications to reduce it. Statins are drugs that reduce the amount of cholesterol made in your liver. They affect LDL levels more than HDL or triglyceride levels. Niacin reduces LDL cholesterol and triglycerides and increases HDL cholesterol made in your liver. Bile acid binding resins are drugs that prevent the reuse of bile after helping to digest your food. As a result, your liver uses more cholesterol to replace the lost bile, which means less cholesterol in your bloodstream. Fibrates are mainly used to reduce triglyceride levels in your blood, but they can also raise HDL levels. Cholesterol absorption inhibitors reduce the amount of cholesterol absorbed by your intestines from the food you eat. In many cases, the same steps can help maintain healthy cholesterol and triglyceride levels, such as eating a diet low in saturated fat, trans fat, and cholesterol, getting regular exercise, managing your weight, and not smoking.
Okay, so like the video was saying, we have good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, and cholesterol is essential for the body's functioning as well. However, when we ingest too much of the cholesterol, the body can also produce its own cholesterol. When you ingest too much cholesterol, we have that process of plaque buildup, and the LDL is the bad cholesterol, HDL is good cholesterol. So there are foods that have high content of low LDL and low content of high DL, and that's usually comes from fatty meats or the oils that they were talking about. However, we can change this trend in our fast lifestyle, like which I touched upon in the beginning, by introducing more holistic foods or whole foods, foods that are able to help our kidney functioning and our liver, and reduce those saturated fats which come from prepared or processed foods. Water also helps, and antioxidants. Water can help flush out any kind of toxins or harmful things throughout our bloodstream once it reaches the kidneys and the urinary system. Also, the quality of our air has a lot to do that affects our blood flow and our circulatory system, and if we're say, for example, we're in our our main job is working in a coal mine. If you can imagine, in a coal mine, you're breathing in a lot of soot and sand and all kinds of, of, of air, which is not actually rich in oxygen at all. It's more rich in harmful things, and that can also have effect, along with, you know, the lifestyle choices of smoking and being around high smog areas. You know, places that come to mind like are in, you know, Los Angeles. If anybody's here from Los Angeles, I apologize. But the quality of air in Los Angeles is always poor, always poor. And you know, I was reading about their restrictions on you know, their vehicles. The vehicles that are registered in the state of Los Angeles are under more strict guidelines than any other part of the United States when it comes to emissions control. So it's a Go Green movement in Los Angeles and California. That's kind of where it started. Cholesterol, everybody knows, is the main culprit when it comes to increasing blood pressure. And this is a video that'll show how blood pressure
makes
happens.
you feel like your pockets are full of batteries. You just unwrapped all your presents on Christmas morning. Should you start with the pop-up ice gun or the...
So how does cholesterol how is it attributed to high blood pressure is the next clip.
High blood pressure, or hypertension, is a common condition in which the force of blood on the walls of your arteries is often too high. Arteries are the blood vessels that carry blood away from your heart to supply your tissues with oxygen and nutrients. In your heart, two chambers, called ventricles, contract with each heartbeat to push blood to your lungs and through your arteries to your body. As blood flows through them, three main factors affect the pressure on your artery walls. The first is cardiac output, or the amount of blood your ventricles push out of your heart each minute. Your blood pressure goes up as cardiac output increases. The second factor affecting your blood pressure is blood volume, or the total amount of blood in your body. Blood pressure also goes up as blood volume increases. The third factor that affects your blood pressure is resistance, which is anything working against the blood flow through your arteries. Several factors contribute to resistance. One resistance factor is the flexibility of your artery wall. Healthy arteries expand with each heartbeat to help reduce blood pressure on the wall. Another resistance factor is the diameter of your arteries. Your body is able to increase the diameter of your arteries to lower your blood pressure, or reduce the diameter to raise your blood pressure. A third resistance factor is blood viscosity, or thickness. In your blood, more particles, such as proteins and fat, increase viscosity. If your blood is thicker, your blood pressure goes up as your heart works harder to push it through your arteries. Your blood pressure can be measured with a device called a sphygmomanometer, or blood pressure cuff. When your heart beats, the pressure of blood on the walls of your arteries is called systolic pressure. When your heart relaxes between beats, pressure on the artery wall is called diastolic pressure. While your blood pressure may change throughout the day, it should normally be less than 120 millimeters of mercury for systolic pressure and less than 80 millimeters of mercury for diastolic pressure. If your systolic pressure frequently stays above 140, or your diastolic pressure frequently stays above 90, you have high blood pressure. Over time, high blood pressure will damage the walls of your arteries. Your artery wall may become weak and form an enlargement called an aneurysm, or the wall may burst and bleed into the surrounding tissue. Small tears in your artery wall may attract certain substances in your blood, such as cholesterol, fat, and calcium, to form a buildup called a plaque. Blood flow through your artery decreases as the plaque enlarges. Blood cells can stick to the plaque and form solid clumps called clots, further reducing or completely blocking your blood flow. Damage to your arteries raises your blood pressure even more by making your heart beat more forcefully. Artery damage and reduced blood flow lead to conditions such as a stroke, heart attack, or kidney disease. In most cases, the cause of high blood pressure or hypertension is unknown. This type of high blood pressure is called primary or essential hypertension. Treatment for essential hypertension includes lifestyle changes, such as eating a healthy diet. If you are sensitive to the sodium in salt, your doctor may recommend limiting your intake of salt and highly processed foods. Sodium may cause your body to retain water, which increases both your blood volume and your blood pressure. Other lifestyle changes that can reduce blood pressure include avoiding excessive alcohol intake, getting regular exercise, losing weight if you are overweight, and quitting smoking. Your doctor may also recommend medications that act on your kidneys, blood vessels, or heart to help reduce your blood pressure. Diuretics, commonly called water pills, cause your kidneys to move more salt and water from your blood into your urine, which reduces your blood volume and pressure.
Okay, that was a section on drugs, medical drugs, and we'd like to focus on how to avoid being put on long-term medications by taking care of our lifestyle. Lifestyle has a lot to do with our health, and what can we do to lower our cholesterol? Well, we can change our lifestyle. Like we discussed, and the theme that I was attempting to promote is that the heart is like a factory. It has a shipping and receiving zone. It has an input and output. So similarly to our body, we have to take care of what goes in, the input, so we have a better output, or so we can control our health and our long-term quality of life. Some foods that come to mind to reduce the cholesterol are oatmeal or anything that's high in fiber, leafy vegetables. Fish is an excellent source for omega-3. It's a fatty acid which is known to reduce the bad cholesterol and increase the good cholesterol. And samples of fish that we can find in the marketplace is mackerel, salmon, albacore, tuna, sardines, and trout, and so on and so forth. And so for all you outdoorsy people, go out there and grab some fish. Yeah, it's good for you. Walnuts and almonds. These are good, and they have a high fat content, and you can also find almond oil as well. But use in moderation. 2 tablespoons will do the trick. And you know, I'm a big proponent of olive oil, and olive oil is known to have a high quantity of antioxidants. This terminology basically means that it's a you know, an oil which has antioxidant, you know, components to rid the bloodstream of harmful things like carbon dioxide, you know, different toxins, to clear the blood. So olive oil is a very good source to clean the blood. Foods. The number one input which we can, you know, aside from taking, you know, pharmaceutical drugs, is foods. And some foods that come to mind, like we talked about, the leafy vegetables. We have omega-3 fatty acids from you know, fish and other foods also. And pomegranates is a very good fruit. A lot of fruit is actually high in sugar too, so we have to watch ourselves when it comes to the fruit. But this pomegranate, it's a wonderful food. We have green tea, green leafy vegetables, black seeds. Everybody knows the benefits of that from our you know, Islamic teachings. You know, black seeds are used by our Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and you know, they're a cure for everything except death. And I wanted to show another video if I have time. Do I have time? 5 minutes? This is a video shortly of how, hopefully it's short. Yeah, 5 minutes, great. Okay. It's going to show, you know, in an illustrative, you know, demonstration of how the heart can fail.
They reflect what you give them. That's why the quality of their...
And I apologize about some of the pictures. I didn't realize they were kind of graphic. I do apologize for the children in the audience. I wasn't expecting any children.
Your heart is a muscular organ that pumps blood containing the oxygen and nutrients your body needs. The pumping sections of the heart are the right atrium,
Yeah, we discussed this
right
earlier.
ventricle. In your heart, oxygen-poor blood flows from your body through large veins into your right atrium. Next, your blood moves into your right ventricle, which contracts, sending blood out of the heart to pick up oxygen from your lungs. Oxygen-rich blood moves out of your lungs into your left atrium, then moves into your left ventricle. Finally, your left ventricle contracts, sending oxygen-rich blood out of your heart to your body. If you have heart failure, your heart has lost the ability to pump enough blood to meet your body's needs. You may have weak or damaged ventricular walls that are not able to push enough blood out of your heart. You may also have stiff and thickened ventricular walls that do not allow your heart to fill with enough blood. If you have left-sided heart failure, your left ventricle does not deliver enough oxygen-rich blood to your body, making you feel tired and out of breath. Your failing left ventricle also increases the blood pressure in the blood vessels between your lungs and left ventricle. This increased pressure forces fluid out of your blood and into your lung tissues, which makes it difficult for you to breathe. If you have right-sided heart failure, your right ventricle is unable to contract with enough force to push blood to your lungs. The result is a buildup of blood in your veins, which causes a buildup of fluid called edema throughout the tissues in your body. Over time, heart failure on either side of your heart results in weakened, enlarged ventricles that deliver less blood to your body. To make up for the decreased amount of blood, your nervous system releases stress hormones that increase the speed and force of your heartbeat. Unfortunately, the continued release of these stress hormones makes your heart failure worse because they damage the muscle cells in your ventricles.
Okay, you get the idea. So, I appreciate all of your attentiveness. I apologize about taking too much time, but hopefully I enlightened you all to some extent, myself included, regarding the heart. And it's important that we, as Muslims, not to, put anything against, the science or scientific methodology, but it's important to always, according to Quran and Sunnah, you keep that in your lifestyle. You make healthy decisions, choose halal foods, halal sources of sustenance, and inshallah, our cardio health, our heart won't let us down. So, inshallah, I'd like to close with a hadith that we read a little while back, and it'll be in Arabic. My Arabic is not the best, but inshallah, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Ya Musarrif al-Qulub, Sarif Qulubana ala ta'atik. And the meaning more or less is, O Allah, controller of our hearts, guide our hearts to your obedience. So with that, I'll conclude the presentation of the talk on the heart. Jazakallah khair.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.